Right, so strap yourselves in, folks. We are diving deep, deep into the Indian Union budget for 2025-26.
That's right.
You want the highlights, you want to know what's changed,
Right.
and you want to know how it hits you right in the pocketbook.
Absolutely.
Well, good news. We've got this fantastic analysis from ASK Investment Managers to break it all down.
Mm-hmm.
They're even calling part of this a consumption bazooka. Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
Tax cuts, infrastructure spending, the whole 9 yards. So let's unpack it all.
Sounds good.
So give us the big picture. What's the overall theme here?
Well, the budget is really structured around three key themes: consumption, consolidation, and capex. So basically a three-pronged approach to stimulate economic growth.
Okay, so like the three C's. But what do they actually mean?
Like in real world terms.
Yeah, like in real world terms.
So consumption means putting more money into people's pockets, hoping that will boost spending and demand.
Mm-hmm.
Consolidation refers to the government keeping their finances in check, aiming for sustainable growth without, going on a spending spree.
Right, right.
And then capex, which is capital expenditure, is all about investing in infrastructure to create jobs and fuel that long-term economic expansion.
So it sounds like a mix of kind of short-term stimulus and then these long-term strategic investments. But how are they going to balance that with being responsible, fiscally responsible?
Well, they're targeting a gross fiscal deficit, or GFD, of 4.4% of GDP. So that suggests some level of fiscal prudence while still pursuing these growth-oriented policies.
Okay, interesting. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, right? This consumption bazooka everyone's buzzing about. What does it actually entail?
Well, one of the big headlines is the change to income tax. Zero income tax on earnings up to 12 lakh.
Wow.
Which it could significantly impact individual taxpayers.
No income tax up to 12 lakh. That's pretty huge. What kind of ripple effect are we looking at here?
Well, it's designed to increase disposable income, encouraging people to spend more and stimulate demand across different sectors. The idea is that this will lead to business growth, more jobs, and a more vibrant economy overall.
Makes sense. So more money in people's pockets, more spending, and a potential boost to the economy.
Exactly.
Now, the ASK report highlighted a few sectors that could see a big impact from this. Let's start with FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. What are they predicting?
Well, the report suggests that the combination of these tax cuts and increased rural spending could lead to growth in both urban and rural FMCG markets.
Okay, that makes sense. More money, equals more spending on everyday stuff.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting was their prediction about what they call premiumization in FMCG.
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
It means people might start opting for higher-end brands. As disposable income rises, consumers tend to upgrade their choices, going for the premium offerings.
So we might see people like shifting to more expensive brands of groceries, personal care products, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It's a trend that's been observed in other economies as well.
Interesting. What about the auto industry? Any predictions there?
Yeah. They're predicting a rise in demand for entry-level vehicles,
right,
like motorcycles, smaller cars,
exits,
fueled by that increased disposable income. But it's not just about traditional vehicles.
Oh.
There are custom duty exemptions for EV battery manufacturing, too. So a push towards electric vehicles as well.
So they're trying to incentivize both traditional and electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's like catering to different income levels, but also keeping an eye on the future of transportation. But let's shift gears now to the capex part of the budget.
Sure.
We know a whopping $11.2 trillion has been allocated for capital expenditure. But what does that actually mean in practical terms?
Well, this is all about investing in the future. That $11.2 trillion is going towards building and improving infrastructure. Things like roads, bridges, power plants, you name it. And these investments create jobs in the short term, but they also lay the foundation for sustainable economic growth in the long run.
So it's not just spending money, it's investing it strategically in areas that will have a lasting impact.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of strategic investments, what about the power sector? What jumped out at you from the report?
Well, there's a significant increase in the allocation for solar power, along with custom duty exemptions for manufacturing solar cells and panels. Clearly, India is going big on solar energy.
Yeah, that's fantastic news for renewable energy. What I found particularly interesting was the mention of nuclear power.
Right.
What's the plan there?
Well, they're planning to use public-private partnerships to develop these small modular reactors, and they're investing heavily in research and development for new nuclear technologies. Their goal is to have 100 GW of nuclear power capacity by 2047.
Wow.
It's a long-term vision.
That's a long game for sure. It
Yeah.
seems like they're really trying to create a diverse energy landscape for the future. But before we go too deep into that, let's touch on a few other areas where this capital expenditure is going. Defense, housing, there were a few others. What were the key points?
Okay, well, defense is seeing a 13% increase in capital expenditure. There's a focus on developing the space economy, boosting domestic shipbuilding, promoting aviation MRO, which is maintenance, repair, and operations, and expanding port infrastructure.
Wow.
It's a pretty broad investment in national security and strategic capabilities.
So strengthening defense capabilities on multiple fronts. Got it. What about housing? Affordable housing is a big deal in India.
Absolutely. The allocation for PMA, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, has been increased by, get this, 64%.
Wow.
This program, of course, provides those affordable housing options, and this increase could significantly impact the construction industry.
Yeah.
And, of course, the lives of a lot of people seeking those affordable homes.
Okay, so a big boost to affordable housing. That's good news. What about the Swami H Fund? I remember that was set up to help revive those stalled housing projects.
Right, so they're projecting that under Swami H, another 40,000 units in stress projects will be completed in 2025. And they're also planning to launch Swami Fund 2, a new initiative that will bring together government funding, bank loans, and private investments to help complete an additional 100,000 units in these stalled projects.
So a two-pronged approach, boosting new affordable housing while also working to complete these existing ones that ran into trouble. That's a smart strategy.
Yeah.
Now, let's zoom in on a couple of sectors that often have interesting developments in the budget. Telecom and oil and gas.
Right.
What's happening there?
Okay, so in telecom, the projected reduction in telecom receipts suggests possible waivers on things like OGR dues and spectrum payments. This could be positive for major telecom service providers.
So a potential financial break for telecom companies. Interesting. What about the FlartNet project? That's aimed at expanding broadband in rural India, right?
Yes, and it's seen a substantial increase in allocation. So good news for domestic telecom equipment manufacturers, and it could help bridge that digital divide between urban and rural areas. It's aligned with the government's focus on digitalization as a key driver of growth.
Makes sense. Now, what about oil and gas? Anything noteworthy there?
The LPG subsidy for FY26 has been revised downwards,
Oh, wait.
which might not be welcomed by those oil marketing companies.
All right.
But on a more positive note, they are proposing a new urea plant, which will benefit oil and gas producers and gas pipeline operators as well.
Okay, so a mixed bag for oil and gas.
Yeah.
But some potentially positive developments too. Now, before we move on, I want to talk about something that's been a recurring theme throughout this whole deep dive, this emphasis on expanding credit availability. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Access to credit is crucial, especially for small businesses and entrepreneurs. You know, those are often the engines of economic growth. And this budget has several initiatives designed to make it easier for those groups to get funding.
Like, what kind of initiatives are we talking about? What are they doing?
Well, one key measure is the increase in the credit guarantee cover for MSMEs and startups. This gives banks more confidence to lend to these businesses, even if they don't have a long credit history or much collateral.
So it's about like de-risking lending for banks,
Exactly.
making it easier for smaller businesses to get that capital. Okay,
Yeah.
what else? What else are they doing?
Well, they're launching customized credit cards specifically for micro enterprises, registered on that Ujjam portal with a limit of 5 lakh,
Okay.
aiming to issue 10 lakh of these cards in the first year alone. It's pretty ambitious, but it shows their commitment to these micro enterprises.
10 lakh credit cards. Wow. That's impressive. What about startups? They play a huge role in driving innovation and creating jobs. Anything specific for them?
Yeah, definitely. They're enhancing the credit guarantee cover for startups as well, increasing it from 10 crore to 20 crore. They're also moderating the guarantee fee for loans in 27 key sectors to just 1%, making it more attractive for startups to access that credit.
That's fantastic news for startups. Lower fees, lower borrowing costs. That makes a big difference, especially when they're starting out. And speaking of inclusivity, What about women entrepreneurs? Any initiatives aimed at supporting them?
Absolutely. There's a new scheme launching specifically for first-time women entrepreneurs from scheduled castes and scheduled tribes.
Okay.
It's going to provide term loans of up to 2 crore over the next 5 years. It's a significant investment in empowering women to start and grow their businesses.
That's a wonderful initiative, really creating opportunities for women entrepreneurs. Now, I want to circle back to one detail that I found interesting. It's called the Partial Credit Enhancement Facility for corporate bonds in the infrastructure sector. Can you shed some light on that?
Sure. The National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, or NABI-FID, will be setting this facility up. It's basically a way to make it easier for infrastructure projects to raise funds by issuing bonds. NABI-FID will provide a partial credit enhancement, reducing the risk for investors and making those bonds more attractive.
That's clever. It's like it's encouraging more private investment into infrastructure, which is, crucial for India's development. Now, before we move on, I want to briefly touch on two sectors that we haven't really talked about in detail: financials and healthcare.
Hmm.
Starting with financials, what stood out to you in this budget?
Well, the changes to unit-linked insurance plans, or ULIPs, are noteworthy. Previously, if a ULIP had a ticket size greater than 2.5 lakh, the maturity proceeds were taxed as income from other sources. Now they'll be taxed as capital gains, meaning a lower tax rate.
Okay,
This could make ULIPs a more attractive investment option for some people.
interesting. So a potential boost for the insurance industry. What about foreign investment in the financial sector?
They're proposing raising the FDI limit in insurance from 74% to 100%.
Wow.
However, there is a requirement: all premiums collected from these policies must be invested within India.
Okay,
So it's attracting foreign capital, but ensuring it's used to support the domestic economy.
makes sense. Now switching to healthcare. I know we briefly touched on the customs duty exemptions for life-saving drugs and the push for these daycare cancer centers, but anything else noteworthy in the sector?
Well, one interesting aspect is the emphasis on traditional Indian medicine systems known as AYUSH.
Okay.
That includes things like Ayurveda, yoga, naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, and homeopathy.
A lot of acronyms there.
There are. The budget proposes increasing the allocation for the AYUSH ministry, indicating a focus on integrating these traditional systems into the mainstream healthcare system.
So recognizing the value of both modern medicine and traditional healing practices, that's interesting. And what about mental health? It's such an important issue these days. Does the budget address this at all?
It does. They're proposing to set up a national telemental health program, which will provide online counseling and support services
Okay.
for people with mental health issues.
That's fantastic. Making those services more accessible, especially in remote areas, that's a big step. Seems like they're trying to create a more holistic approach to healthcare, addressing physical health, mental well-being, even incorporating those traditional medicine systems. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on a couple of sectors that we haven't mentioned yet. The ASK report has some interesting insights on the footwear and tobacco industries.
Let's start with footwear. What's happening there?
They're planning to implement measures aimed at boosting the productivity, quality, and competitiveness of India's footwear and leather sector.
Mhm.
This could benefit everyone from small-scale shoemakers to larger manufacturers,
Okay.
helping them compete both domestically and internationally.
So supporting a traditional industry and helping it become more competitive globally.
Makes sense. And what about tobacco? I know this is a sensitive one, but it's worth mentioning because it does have an economic impact.
Right, of course. Well, the budget maintains the status quo on tobacco taxation.
Okay.
So no new tax hikes, which is generally seen as a positive for cigarette companies, allowing them to focus on volume growth without worrying about increased taxes.
All right, so two very different industries, both impacted by the budget in their own way. Now let's move on to another area that caught my eye, which is critical minerals and recycling. The report highlighted what they call a critical minerals mission,
Right.
aimed at boosting domestic production and recycling of these important resources. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, this mission is crucial for India's long-term economic growth and technological advancement.
Critical minerals are essential components of everything, from smartphones and electric vehicles to defense equipment and renewable energy technologies. By focusing on domestic production and recycling, India can reduce its dependence on imports and become more self-reliant.
So it's not just about economic growth, it's also about strategic independence. what specific steps are they taking to promote this recycling and make these minerals more accessible?
They're proposing reductions in basic customs duty on a range of mineral and waste imports,
Okay.
making it easier and cheaper for companies to source these materials, which should encourage more recycling and help build that robust domestic supply chain for these critical minerals.
Makes sense. So creating the right incentives for businesses to invest in that recycling and domestic production. Now let's talk about a sector that's always a big focus in the Indian budget, agriculture. What are the key highlights this time around?
Well, one major announcement is the enhancement of the loan limit under the modified interest subvention scheme for farmers. The limit for loans taken through those Kizan credit cards is being increased from 3 lakh to 5 lakh, giving farmers more access to credit.
That's a substantial increase. What kind of impact do you think this will have on the agricultural sector?
Well, this will enable farmers to invest more in their crops, adopt new technologies, and ultimately improve their livelihoods. It's a significant step towards strengthening the agricultural sector
Right.
and supporting, the backbone of the Indian economy.
Absolutely, access to credit is essential for them to thrive. And what about fertilizer subsidies? Those are always a big part of the agricultural budget. Any changes there?
There has been a marginal reduction in fertilizer subsidy for FY26, but to counterbalance that, they've announced plans to set up a new urea plant.
Okay.
This will help boost domestic production of fertilizers, which aligns with that overall theme of self-reliance that we've seen across several sectors.
So balancing fiscal prudence with the need to support farmers seems like
Yeah.
a delicate act. Are there any other notable initiatives in the agricultural sector that you saw?
Yes, actually, there are a few more. They've announced a scheme in partnership with states to enhance agricultural productivity, focusing on 100 districts that have historically had low productivity. This scheme aims to help 17 million farmers improve their yields,
Wow.
which could significantly impact overall agricultural output. They also have plans for a 6-year mission focused on achieving self-reliance in pulses, and a 5-year mission to improve cotton productivity and promote the cultivation of those extra-long staple cotton varieties.
That's impressive. It seems like they're taking a very comprehensive approach to agriculture, addressing everything from credit availability to crop diversification and even technology adoption.
Exactly. It's a multi-pronged strategy aimed at making the sector more resilient, productive, and profitable for the millions of farmers who depend on it.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive so far. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore, and I'm really eager to delve into some of the finer details and see what other hidden gems we can uncover.
Me too. It's a fascinating budget. Yeah, it's a wide-ranging budget. You're right. And what's striking is the sheer depth and breadth of initiatives.
Yeah, it's been fascinating unpacking it all so far. Now, I want to circle back to this whole idea of consumption bazooka, right? And we talked about FMCG, autos, but the report also mentioned some interesting moves aimed at boosting other specific industries. One that caught my eye was footwear. They're planning to implement measures to make India's footwear and leather sector more competitive, globally.
Right. The focus seems to be on improving productivity, quality, and overall competitiveness, which could have a positive ripple effect throughout the whole ecosystem.
So helping a traditional industry step up its game and compete on a global level. That's interesting. And then there's the tobacco industry. I know it's a controversial one, but the report notes that the government's kept tobacco taxation unchanged. What kind of impact do you see that having?
Well, from a purely economic standpoint, the lack of any tax hikes is generally seen as a positive for cigarette companies. It allows them to focus on increasing sales volume without worrying about those higher taxes eating into their profits.
Right. Okay, so two very different industries, both feeling the impact of the budget in their own ways. Now, shifting gears a bit, the report highlights this thing called a critical minerals mission. It sounds pretty important.
It is. This mission is aiming to boost domestic production and recycling of these critical minerals, which are really essential for a wide range of industries.
Like what kind of industries are we talking about here?
Think smartphones, electric vehicles, defense equipment, renewable energy technologies. Critical minerals are everywhere.
Wow.
By focusing on domestic production and recycling, India can reduce its reliance on those imports and strengthen its position in these strategically important sectors.
So it's about building self-reliance and reducing vulnerability to global supply chain disruptions. That makes a lot of sense. What specific steps are they taking to make this happen?
One key measure is reducing basic customs duty on imports of certain minerals and waste products. This will make it easier and more cost-effective for companies to source these materials domestically, encouraging more recycling and the development of a more robust supply chain.
It's about creating the right conditions for businesses to invest in that domestic production and recycling. That's smart. Now let's turn our attention to a sector that's, close to the heart of India: agriculture.
Yeah.
What stood out to you in the budget's approach to agriculture?
Well, they're taking a multi-pronged approach with a focus on financial support, infrastructure development, and those technological advancements. For example, they're enhancing the loan limit under that modified interest subvention scheme for farmers.
Okay.
This means that farmers can access larger loans through those Kisan credit cards, giving them more financial flexibility.
That's a big help for farmers, especially when input costs are rising and everything. How much has the loan limit been increased by?
It's gone up from 3 lakh to 5 lakh,
Okay.
which is a significant jump. This will empower farmers to invest more in their operations, adopt new technologies, and hopefully increase their productivity and incomes.
That's great news for farmers. And what about fertilizer subsidies? I know those have been a topic of discussion in recent years.
Right. Well, there has been a slight reduction in the fertilizer subsidy for the coming fiscal year. But to counterbalance that, they're also planning to set up a new urea plant to boost that domestic production of fertilizers. So this move towards self-reliance, again, aligns with what we've seen in other sectors.
So balancing fiscal responsibility with the need to support farmers.
Exactly.
Are there any other noteworthy initiatives in the agricultural sector?
They've announced a new scheme to enhance agricultural productivity, targeting 100 districts that have historically struggled with those low yields.
Okay.
The goal is to help 17 million farmers in those districts improve their output, which could have a significant impact on national food security.
That sounds promising. It's encouraging to see them focusing on those areas that need the most support. Are there any other initiatives aimed at specific crops or challenges?
There are 2 missions worth highlighting. A 6-year mission to achieve self-reliance in pulses production, and then a 5-year mission to improve cotton productivity and promote the cultivation of those extra long staple cotton. These initiatives are aimed at addressing specific challenges and strengthening India's position in key agricultural commodities.
It's great to see them taking such a comprehensive approach to agriculture. It's clear that they recognize the importance of this sector for the overall health of the economy. Now, I want to delve a bit deeper into something we touched on earlier, which is the government's focus on expanding credit availability.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be pulling out all the stops to ensure that businesses, especially those small and medium-sized enterprises, have access to that funding they need.
Absolutely. Access to credit is often the biggest hurdle for smaller businesses, and this budget is tackling that head on. They've introduced several measures specifically designed to make it easier for those MSMEs to access the capital they need to grow and thrive.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us some examples of these measures? Like, what are they doing differently this time around?
One of the key changes is the increase in that credit guarantee cover for MSMEs.
Okay.
This cover essentially acts as insurance for banks, giving them more confidence to lend to those MSMEs, even if those businesses don't have a long credit history or a lot of collateral.
So it's about reducing the risk for banks and making them more willing to lend to smaller businesses.
Exactly.
That's a smart strategy.
Okay.
How much has that credit guarantee cover been increased by?
It's been doubled from 5 crore to 10 crore.
Wow.
Which is a significant boost. This will encourage banks to lend more freely to MSMEs, knowing that they have that safety net, in case of defaults.
That's a big win for MSMEs. And what about micro enterprises? Are there any specific initiatives aimed at helping them access credit?
They're launching a new program that'll provide customized credit cards to micro enterprises, registered on that UDIM portal.
Okay.
Each card will have a limit of 5 lakh, and they're aiming to issue 10 lakh of these cards in the first year alone. So this could be a game changer for micro enterprises, giving them access to much needed working capital.
Wow, 10 lakh credit cards in a year. That's ambitious. It shows that they're serious about supporting those smallest of businesses. And what about startups, which are often the drivers of innovation?
Mhm.
Any love for them in the budget?
Yes, startups are getting some love too.
Okay.
They've increased the credit guarantee cover for startups from 10 crore to 20 crore, providing even more security for lenders. They're also reducing that guarantee fee for loans in 27 priority sectors to just 1%, making it even more affordable for startups to access credit.
That's great news for startups.
Mm-hmm.
Lower guarantee fees mean lower borrowing costs, which can make a huge difference for those young companies just trying to get off the ground.
Right.
And what about women entrepreneurs? Are there any initiatives specifically targeted at them?
They've launched a new scheme that'll provide term loans of up to 2 crore to 5 lakh first-time women entrepreneurs from scheduled castes and scheduled tribes.
Okay.
This program, spread over the next 5 years, aims to empower women from those marginalized communities to start and grow their own businesses.
That's fantastic. It's wonderful to see them taking those concrete steps to promote women's entrepreneurship. It seems like they're really trying to create that level playing field and ensure that everyone has a fair shot at success. Now, I want to touch on something that we briefly mentioned earlier, which is that partial credit enhancement facility for infrastructure projects. Can you explain what that is and how it works?
Sure. This facility set up by the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, or NABI-FID, will provide a partial credit enhancement for corporate bonds issued to finance infrastructure projects. So this essentially reduces the risk for investors, making those bonds more attractive and encouraging more private investment.
It's a clever way to incentivize private investment in a sector that's so critical for India's growth.
Mm.
Now, let's shift gears to two sectors that are always in the spotlight: financials and healthcare. Starting with financials, what are some of the key takeaways from this budget?
One notable change is the way unit-linked insurance plans, or ULIPs, are taxed. Previously, for those policies with a ticket size greater than 2.5 lakh, the maturity proceeds were taxed as regular income. Now they'll be treated as capital gains, meaning a lower tax rate. So this could make ULIPs more appealing to investors.
Interesting. So a potential boost for the insurance industry there. What about foreign investment in the financial sector? Any changes there?
They are proposing to increase that foreign direct investment, or FDI, limit in the insurance sector from 74% to 100%.
Wow.
However, there is a condition attached. All premiums collected from these policies must be invested within India. It's a way to attract foreign capital while ensuring it contributes to the domestic economy.
Smart move. Now let's talk about healthcare. What are some of the highlights from this budget in terms of healthcare initiatives?
One area they're focusing on is integrating traditional Indian medicine systems, known as AYUSH, into the mainstream healthcare system. They're increasing that allocation for the AYUSH ministry, which signals a commitment to promoting these traditional practices alongside modern medicine.
There's an interesting approach, recognizing the value of both traditional and modern healthcare systems. And what about mental health, which has become an increasingly important issue, in recent years? Does the budget address this at all?
It does. They're proposing a national telemental health program, which will provide those online counseling and support services, making mental health care more accessible, especially for people in those remote areas.
That's a great initiative, breaking down those barriers to mental health care. It seems like they're trying to create a more holistic and inclusive healthcare system. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one final topic that caught my eye, which is skill development. I know India has a a young and growing workforce, and equipping them with the right skills is really crucial for the future.
Absolutely, you're right. Skill development is essential for unlocking the potential of India's workforce. This budget introduces several initiatives aimed at enhancing skills and creating a more competitive workforce.
Can you give us some examples of these initiatives? Like, what are some of the key areas they're focusing on?
One major focus is on promoting those industry relevant skills, particularly in those emerging sectors like artificial intelligence, data science, and cybersecurity. They're launching new programs and partnerships to equip young people with the skills that are in high demand in the job market.
So, bridging the gap between what students learn in school and what employers are actually looking for, that's crucial.
Yeah.
What else are they doing to enhance skills?
They're also investing in upskilling and reskilling programs for the existing workforce, helping people adapt to those changing demands of the job market. This includes providing training in new technologies and digital literacy,
Yeah.
ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to stay relevant and employable.
That's so important in today's rapidly evolving world.
Yeah.
It's great to see them recognizing that skill development is not just about preparing young people for their first jobs, but also about supporting lifelong learning and adaptability.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of continuous learning and ensuring that the workforce is equipped to meet those challenges and opportunities of the future.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from tax cuts and infrastructure spending to credit availability and healthcare initiatives. This budget truly touches on all aspects
Yeah.
of the Indian economy and outlines a vision for a more prosperous and inclusive future.
Yeah, it's clear that this budget is not just about addressing those immediate concerns, but also about laying the foundation for sustainable and equitable growth in the years to come.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you for your final takeaway. What's the one thing that's really struck you about this budget as we've delved into its intricacies?
I think what stands out to me is this emphasis on balancing ambition with pragmatism.
Mm.
It's not just throwing money at problems, but making these strategic investments that will yield those long-term benefits. There's a clear focus on creating a robust and resilient economy, but also addressing social inequalities and promoting inclusivity.
I like that. You're right. It's not just growth for growth's sake. It's about creating opportunities for everyone.
Right.
It seems like they're really trying to build an India that's both economically powerful and socially just.
Precisely, and I think that's what makes this budget so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just a set of numbers. It's a vision for the future, a blueprint for a stronger, more equitable, more sustainable India.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the 2025-26 union budget. It's been a fascinating journey, unpacking all the details and exploring what it all means.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of what's in this budget, how it could impact your lives, your businesses, and the future of India. Remember, this is just a starting point. There's so much more to explore in the ASK Investment Manager Report and other analyses out there. So stay curious, keep digging, and as always, we'll see you on the next deep dive.